Hello and welcome to the Thriller Zone. I'm your host, David Temple, and on today's 207th episode, as we approach the end of 2024 and prepare for season 8 in 2025, I am so excited to present to you Danielle Trussoni, New York Times bestselling author of The Ancestor, Angelology, and Angelopolis, all New York Times notable books, and The Puzzle Master, chosen by the Washington Post as one of their best thrillers of 2023. And if her past is any indication of the future, The Puzzle Box is going to be a hit. Please welcome Danielle Trussoni to the Thriller Zone. Welcome to the Thriller Zone. It's so nice to meet you, Danielle.
What a pleasure. Thanks, David, for having me.
The cover, everyone who listens to my show knows that how much I love covers. And there is no prettier cover, I don't think, maybe this year than yours. I mean, stunning.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. So, designer at Random House made this cover. And miraculously, I think it was the first or second cover that they sent me. And I was just like, okay, we did it. This is it. And it's gorgeous. Carlos, his name is, and he's just amazing.
Well, Carlos, we're going to do a big old shout out and a big hug to you, Carlos, because I'll tell you, this is literally one of the most beautiful covers I've seen this year. And it reminds me of, let me make sure I don't mess up the word, Yakuza, right? Is that the right word? Which is the Japanese mafia?
Yeah, Yakuza or Yakuza. Yeah. It's,
Yakuza.
I think that there might be some, the designer was making some references there. Also, the puzzle, the main sort of mystery of the book is a dragon box, it's called.
Yeah.
And also the book is set in the year of the dragon, which we're in right now. We're still in the year of the dragon. So everybody, you could get this book and, put it on your mantelpiece over your fireplace, and you could be like, it's the year of the dragon. And I have this beautiful book with a dragon on it.
That's amazing. If I was into tattoos, I love to look at tattoos. I don't think I could go through the pain, but if I could go through the pain, I would put that on my back.
Oh, that's a good idea. It's beautiful. I agree.
Yeah. Anyway.
Would you put my name on there too?
Well,
What's your pretty look at the cover on? Would it be, would Danielle Trussoni appear someplace in that tattoo?
Right across the top, as represented by Danielle Trussoni. Yeah. Anyway, well, there's two reasons, Danielle, that I was drawn to this book. Maybe three, actually. My good friend Megan, who is representing this book for you, and she's just one of my dear friends, she raved about it. I said, Megan, I only have a tiny little window left before the end of the year. And she said, well, if there's going to be anybody you're going to talk to, this is the gal. And so that's number one. Number two is, of course, the cover. And then number three is I just love puzzles. Yeah. So I thought, well, it's a trifecta win-win-win for me.
Well, I'm so glad because that's, this sort of trifecta, not Megan calling me up and telling me about my own book, but that's the sort of, those are the inspirations for me in writing it.
Yeah.
I'll just preface this. I'm not good at puzzles, but I love the challenge of them. And I also, writing every day, I feel like my brain is constantly in puzzle mode because putting together a book is very much like putting together a puzzle. So yeah, I'm glad that you felt that way about the book. That's what I was hoping for.
Well, it was a delightful read. It was what I would call a little bit off the beaten path of what I ordinarily read. And it's not hugely off the beaten path. It's not like it's some lofty, super esoteric literary fiction. It's just that it was so fresh and original and engaging. It was great characters. It was locations, the mechanics of the puzzle. Of course, your main character, the puzzle master, blew my mind. Plus, my wife and I, Tammy, every weekend we sit down with the New York Times crossword puzzle, and somewhere between that and the Wordle and the connections and the strands and the spelling bee,
You guys are my type of people.
Well, thank you. We do it because we just feel like it keeps us, I mean, besides the fact that it's fun, it keeps us sharp and so forth. But so when I got a chance and I said, babe, look at this book. And she's like, oh, she goes, would I like it? I'm like, you would love it. So I said, I get to set aside a few books a year that I'm like, okay, I know you have limited time because she works a lot. I'm like, this is one. So anyway, all that aside, I wanted to, I was going to start out the gate with this. So how much do you love puzzles? And then you tell me right away, oh, by the way, David. So not a puzzle person per se.
Well, so
classically,
I am a puzzle person. I'm just not very good at them, right? Like I'm not that person who has the New York Times Sunday puzzle, Saturday, the Saturday puzzle, the really hard one in ink and get everything correct. That's not me. But I love trying. I do Wordle, a couple of times a week. And as I said, I feel like I'm in puzzle mode all the time because I'm writing every day. So that's just sort of, I feel like, I don't know. I don't want to get too esoteric here, but I feel like the mindset of putting stuff together that way is sort of how I've lived my life as a writer for the past 20 years. So it feels really natural. This book felt really natural to write.
Well, there's a couple things that fascinated me. I read where you spent like 2 years or so in Japan. And so I thought to myself, well, was that experience part of what inspired you? Did you see a puzzle somewhere that inspired you? Was the elaborate machinations of the puzzle itself that caught you? I mean, what was it? What was the backstory that kind of threw you into this story?
So kind of all of the above. I lived in Japan for 2 years, as you said, and I was completely absorbing everything about Japan. I lived on a small village in the southern island of Japan. I was the only foreign person in that little village, and I was teaching Japanese kids English every day. And as I was there, I was eating Japanese food every day and learning Japanese language and learning about the culture. And I wanted to write something that sort of brought that knowledge into the book. But I didn't know for a long time. So this was 20 years ago that I lived there. For a long time, I didn't know what that would be. And I think it's really, not a good idea to just like say, I'm going to write a book in Japan just for the hell of it. Like, you need to have a really good reason. And then I wrote a book called The Puzzle Master, which was published last year. And that book introduces a character who is an ingenious puzzle solver. I love this character. He has something called savant syndrome. He wasn't always a savant. He got hit on the head and had a traumatic brain injury, which altered his brain slightly, and it left him with a condition that allowed him to solve puzzles almost instantly. And he has a photographic memory. He has synesthesia, which is when you see like colors and hear sounds, when you see letters. And he has all of these really interesting ways of seeing the world that allow him to sort of dive into a mystery that has a cipher or puzzle in it and solve it. And so after I created him, I was like, yes, this is the moment. Get to go back to Japan because I have this, I'm going to show it to you. I don't know if I can get it in here.
Oh, yeah.
It's an actual Japanese puzzle box that I bought in Japan. And so if you look at it, you'll see that it looks almost seamless. It looks seamless, right?
I would say it's completely solid.
But then, so it takes 21 moves to open this box. And the way that it opens is do you see that? There's a slight click, and the little panels move. And if you have to do 21 of these, and the top will open, and it's solved. So it's a little bit like a Rubik's Cube.
Right.
And I actually opened this and put something in there, and then I forgot how to open it again. So I have to figure it back out to get my thing out. But in the novel, Mike Brink, that's the puzzle solver from, that is the main character, is invited to Japan to open the world's most dangerous puzzle, which is one of those puzzle boxes, but it's bigger, and it's 72 moves to open, and it's booby-trapped. And worst of all, everyone who has tried to open it has died trying to do it. So it's a big challenge for this puzzle master.
So basically, he there's a couple things there that I really love, and I don't want to steal any of your thunder, but when I saw this, talking about kismet, synchronicity, so acquired savant syndrome happens to be a characteristic of a character that I'm writing. I've been working on for about a year, and so when I saw that, I'm like, oh my goodness, where do you ever hear this specific of a syndrome? And so I love that. I was immediately pulled in. So I'm just telling you that straight up. I was like, wow.
I can't wait to read that. Also, I discovered after I wrote the first book, The Puzzle Master, that David Baldacci also has a character, Memory Man, that got bumped on the head and developed a photographic memory. It's not, I don't know if he calls it savant syndrome in his book, but it's the same phenomena.
Well, I think, first of all, it's a little bit off the beaten path, as I like to say. So there's check. And so the three of us are in the same room. We're good to go. But also, we're always looking for, I don't want to say tricks because that sounds diminishing, but we want angles or aspects or nuances that flavor the story that are off the beaten path. So I love the fact that we share that. But when I was reading about this character, I thought, this guy is so brilliant because you can feel him going, I know it's dangerous. I shouldn't do it. Everyone else has died. I could possibly die, but I have to solve the puzzle.
Yeah, well, that's what's interesting about this character to me is that there's a real, he's a genius, right? He has this syndrome. He has a kind of superpower, but at the same time, it tortures him. He actually struggles with this. It's the gift is so powerful that it floods his brain with information all the time. He has trouble sleeping. His nervous system is ratcheted up. He has he has a hard time maintaining close relationships with women, and it's all because he is constantly in need of solving. And I find that fascinating. Having a kind of vulnerability in your main character in this way creates an opening where I think readers can really relate.
And empathize, yeah.
And empathize with this character. And me as a writer want to know more about him every time I'm writing about him. And I think readers do too. Also, I just want to say that, and you probably feel this way too with the character you're writing, this kind of gift is perfect for a thriller because anything, it puts this character in danger constantly. He can't resist going in and doing it. And yet, it is extremely dangerous what he's doing.
Yeah, it's like an addiction. It reminds me a little bit. My nephew is autistic, so he's wired a certain way, and if he doesn't get a certain kind of stimulation or solving of situations, he gets agitated. So to your point, yeah, I think it's great because you get the vulnerability, you get the high intellect, the fact that you made the comment about, he doesn't have great relationships with women, yet he does dance in the relationship pool in this story, which and it's so nuanced. I love the way you did that.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that for me, what maybe makes my thrillers and my books a little bit different, you were saying it feels a little bit just slightly different than what you're normally reading. Maybe I don't know, but for me, what I'm interested in as a writer is really developing those nuances in my characters. And even I feel that secondary characters like Dr. Gupta or Rachel or Sakura, these are some of the characters that show up in this book. They all have a backstory, right? They're all pretty nuanced. And that's, other than, writing action scenes, which I love. That's my favorite part of writing.
Your action scenes, by the way, if I may be so bold, and I've got a pretty good pool of fans on this show, and there are some people who really know how to write action scenes. Let me rattle off a few you may have heard of. Jack Carr, Mark Graney, Don Bentley, Brad Thor, to name a few. And you're up there with them. I mean, the way you slam some of these action scenes, I can literally, my palms are sweat a little bit. I'm like, ooh, that's a good indicator. Keep going. Come on, Danielle, give me more,
Fabulous. I want you to tingle. There's certain scenes, there's a scene where the box, where he inserts his fingers into the box, and we know that there's a razor that could fall on his fingers. And that sort of feeling of danger and risk is what I want readers to feel in every chapter of this book.
Well, folks, I'm going to go back to, I'm not going to read it for you, but I'm going to say, so it opens with the Shinto priest. So the way that Danielle paints the scene of this temple is beautiful. It's elegant. It's monastic. It's, there's this quiet hush. All of a sudden, he's been guarding, right? He's been guarding this box for decades. And I don't know why, but it was at this exact moment, he goes, you know what? Nobody's looking. I don't think I'm going to give in. And you're like, are you really going to do that after watching over this thing, the sacred box forever? And then you get to that last sentence of that opening chapter. And I'm like, oh, Shanunu, we're in for a ride.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. You got it. You have to start with, I feel like in a thriller, a good thriller, you need a dead body right away, right? Yeah.
What's a thriller?
The intimation of one. The intimation of one. One to come.
Now, I wanted to know this. So you spent some time in Japan. I've always wanted to go to Japan. I don't know why. I'm just fascinated with that culture. They seem so elegant and kind and gracious and reverential and more polished than some of us Americans sometimes. But my point is, while you were spending that time there, I wanted to know, how long did Danielle imagine this story? Well, what was that first moment like when she went, this character with this syndrome and a puzzle box? Now, you said the story before was a puzzle oriented story. And you may have just said this. Was that lead character in that previous book the same?
Yeah. So I'm going to just show you the cover of that book, because I have the book here. It was called The Puzzle Master.
Oh, okay.
And that introduced this character. His name is Mike Brink, the savant. And so it was really the moment when I imagined that guy, that all of my history in Japan came together, and I imagined this story. This novel, so I sold that first book and the second book at once. I had a full manuscript for The Puzzle Master and just the idea for the puzzle box. And but I knew how that story would go, because I think I've been holding it in my mind for 20 years. And it's the first book. So this is my 7th book. It's the first novel that I have ever written out an outline fairly quickly and stuck by the outline, and really very little changed. It happened. I wrote the book, the first draft, very fast, and hopefully that will happen to me again. Who knows? I have not carrying around too many stories in my mind that long, but it's one of those stories that just came.
All right, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll find out, does Danielle plot or not? Stay with us.
And we're back.
And are you a plotter by nature? Do you like to operate with an outline?
I do, but I like to allow myself the freedom to change things. The Puzzle Master is one of them. I wrote that first, before. I didn't have a contract for that. I didn't have an editor I was working with. And I had a rough outline, but I originally started with a different character, and the Mike Brink puzzle solver character sort of came in. And
wow.
I basically cut 100 pages and restart. I'm sure you've heard of people doing this, and started again and rewrote it with this character as the main character. So I do have a outline, but I like to be flexible, because sometimes the magic happens, and if you're too rigid with your outline, you're not going to be able to incorporate that. So I'm kind of someplace in between, the two poles on the
And I think that's perfect. We go back and forth on this show all the time. You got guys, and there are authors. We are the front row seat to the best thriller writers in the world, in case you haven't seen our byline. And some of those folks are the biggest in the biz. And I'm amazed at how many go, no, dude, I just sit down and let the muse show up and I just crank it out. And I'm like, boo. And then there are others that go like, I'm thinking of Jeffrey Deaver. He may have a couple of 100 pages of an outline before he gets going. And I'm like, no, that's a guy who is really prepared. However, I'm with you. I'm in the middle. So I'm like, okay, I have to have a skeleton of an idea. I got to have an open and a middle and a close. I got to have a pretty good idea of a couple of the characters. And then I want to there's a couple of beats I got to make sure I hit. And then I let all the other magic, much like yourself, come to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's the best way for me to get not only the things that are most important to me, like, the characters, etc., but also hitting those really high plot points, right? When you say that you've got a couple of things you want to hit, for me, it's the twists or these moments where something in the narrative shifts, where you're resolving the mystery, right? So those points are obviously like mapped out, but yeah, it's fun. I mean, the most important thing for me, while I'm writing the first draft, is that I'm feeling it, right? That I'm enjoying it, that it's flowing, I can tell when I'm not enjoying the process that it's not good.
Oh, sure.
So, if I'm enjoying it, I feel like my reader will be enjoying reading it.
Yeah. Do you think, as I'm already jumping a little bit ahead of myself, but I'm thinking to myself, every person that's on the show, as they're talking about the book that's being released, they're either having just finished or soon to finish their next book. So will there be another puzzle story in the future?
Well, I hope so. So I'm not one of those people that are just finishing a new book. I worked on a couple of things this past year that were not Puzzle Master related. But this book has been doing so well and I've had such great responses that I would like to write another one. Yeah.
Well, you get to make friends. I always say this, I make friends with the characters. I feel like, and Mr. Brink here was one of those that I went, he can't just disappear. I got to spend more time with this cat because he's really so interesting. And I think I'm fascinated by the fact that he is marching to the beat of his own drum, as I like to say. And I want to know how that drum sounds in the next scene and next situation.
Yeah, me too. I mean, he's someone that I live with, right? There are a few characters that I've created that I just feel like, it sounds a little bit crazy, but, I think about them, I wonder what they would be doing next. And he's definitely one of those characters. And I've had a lot of readers. There are a lot of readers who are writing and wanting the next book. So I think, however that's going to happen, there will be one.
Isn't it always the best feeling ever when someone says, please, Danielle, you got to give me more of Mike, or fill in the blank of whatever name? I mean, best compliment ever, right?
Yeah, best thing a writer can hear.
And have we given enough of a description of what this story is about so that people who are listening to the show go, ooh, I definitely got to pick up that book?
Well, let me tell you. Let me just describe, overall what it is about. Since I think we sort of danced around it a little bit.
We danced around it.
The story finds Mike Brink, our puzzle master, in New York City when a young woman named Sakura shows up with a puzzle box that looks like this,
right?
A little puzzle box, and inside is an invitation from the Emperor of Japan to come to Japan, to the Imperial Palace, and open the Dragon Box, the world's most difficult puzzle. And as I said before, this puzzle has killed everyone who's tried to open it, but Mike Brink desperately wants to go, and so he does. And he arrives at the Imperial Palace, and I don't think it's giving too much away to say that he opens this box in the, basically the first 20% of the book, and that's what unleashes the adventure. And it sort of shoots him off throughout Japan. He goes to Kyoto and Hakone, which is this gorgeous rural part of Japan where puzzle boxes are made, and to southern Japan. And it's just this great big adventure.
I love it. By the way, so many things there to unpack. Did you happen to go to that warehouse facility that makes puzzles, and were you able to take a tour and or see how they're done?
So, as I said, I lived in Japan 20 years ago, but
Hmm.
when I had the outline of this book and I had a rough draft, I knew the locations I wanted to have in the book. And
Hmm.
I went back to Japan right when they were reopening after COVID. So it was this exquisite experience because it was very empty. Usually it was during cherry blossom season. And so usually it's just a mob scene in Kyoto and in Tokyo at that time, but it was fairly empty. I mean, there were of course, Japanese people, but there weren't tourists. And so we went to every one of these locations that you'll find in the book. So we couldn't get into the Imperial Palace. It's very restricted, but we walked around. And we went to all of the locations in Kyoto. Actually, there was one location in Kyoto that I had written a scene that I wanted in the book, and I got there and I'm like, no, 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 like we're going to cut this. And that was this big, kind of very cool samurai castle called Nijo Castle in Kyoto. And nope, that didn't make it because it just didn't feel right. And so that's something that I like to do when I'm writing is go to the place and just get a feel, sort of read the temperature of that space and see if that's the right place to have in the book.
So you did not get to visit the company or the business that makes the puzzles.
Oh, sorry, you asked me that. Yes, I did actually go. It's not a company. It's like a little workshop.
Oh.
And it's attached to, in the book, I describe it, there's a puzzle museum
Hmm.
in Hakone, a puzzle box museum. And it has the history of, there's like these glass cases with puzzle boxes from, the 19th century all the way to the present. And it shows how they've changed. And there's videos showing how they're made. And then there's this part in the workshop where you can actually go and see how the wood is put together. So I watched, basically the deconstruction of the box, or seeing how the box was put together, allowed me to write I wanted to write about Mike Brink's experience opening it with a really vivid sense that you're actually touching that box and that you're actually opening something. So
Yeah.
that tactile quality is something that came from going to the place.
It's so funny because I was just getting ready to use the word. I'm like,
Tactile?
I said the book feels so tactile. I felt as though as I'm reading it, especially since I'm holding this cover, I'm like, I felt as though almost I was holding the puzzle, which sounds completely insane.
Well, that was, I really wanted the first book, The Puzzle Master, is a little bit more cerebral because the puzzles it's about a cipher, right? So he's solving it in his head. And so it was really my purpose of this to make, it's an action story. It's an action novel. It's a thriller, to have it be very physical.
Sure. Now, I read something in a press piece or somewhere that there is a real life debate, I'm putting that in air quotes, currently happening in Japan, something to do with the imperial family. How does that affect this story? Is that still going on?
So I like to weave in sort of timely questions in my books, and it's that way in The Puzzle Master too. And in the puzzle box, there's a question of the succession of the throne in the imperial family. I don't want to give away too much, but I will say that historically in Japan, there have been empresses, female leaders of the Japanese imperial family. In fact, there have been 8 empresses. And then in the 19th century, Emperor Meiji, who in the book is the one who created this box, right? This dragon box, and hid something very important inside. He implemented primogeniture, I think that's how you say it, where only men can succeed to the imperial throne. Well, right now, right now in Japan, there is one heir to the throne, and it is a woman. It is a young woman. And so there is a big debate in Japan about whether she should be able to inherit the throne when her father passes away. And 80% of Japanese people believe yes.
Yes.
She should. Yes, of course, right? But so there's a lot. It sounds a little bit off in left field when I'm talking about this book, but I've woven, this storyline into the book, and the solution of the puzzle has a lot to do with this idea.
But I'm going to go back to the phrase off the beaten path. That actually feeds the story, Danielle, in my opinion, because it makes it timely, relevant. I feel, you're taking something that's happening right now, weaving it into the book. It's not too dissimilar to, I don't know, a current presidential candidate who happens to be a woman.
Right. And all of our presuppositions about what it means to be a leader or, there's all this subtle, this is in Japan too, subtle ideas of what power is and who is legitimate and who is not. And so I do think it's very timely and interesting. It's an interesting way to think about this, especially, the current questions we have in the United States, but looking at it at a different country, it sort of gives us a remove from these issues that we can really look at them in a different way.
Yeah. And in my opinion, and I don't want to drill down on politics right now because it's really all about you, DT, from one DT to another. But I think it's a good thing. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, no, I think it's an important question for us to think about. And I think, fiction, especially with thrillers, right? Like we ask the question, are thrillers meant to just entertain us, send us off on a wild ride, or do we want to think about things too while we're reading? And I'm the type of reader that I need the entertainment. I need the fun characters, but but when I close that book, I want to have questions that remain and I want to feel like I've learned something.
Yeah.
So I feel like that part of the book is there for me. In writing it, the research was really, really important and fun because of that element.
Well, just as a puzzle begs to be solved, so does a thriller beg to be solved. And I'm with you. I'm sounding like, in my age, young lady. But I want to spend my time learning something. Yes, I want to be entertained. Yes, I want you to take me away. Yes, yes, yes. But teach me something, for crying out loud, because I don't know about you, but I only have 24 hours in a day. So I need to make everything count. And with this, I learned a lot of stuff. I learned a little bit about Japan. I learned about culture. I learned about puzzles. So I'm with you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. That's the best thing I've heard about this book from anyone is that they've taken something away other than just being thrilled, which is no small thing, right? It's not easy to write a book that just simply thrills the reader, which I'm very proud to have done and wanted to do. But yeah, if you can leave the experience of reading the book and be like, oh, that's not gonna, that's gonna stay with me. There's all of this stuff I learned about Japan and all of this stuff that I'm thinking about women in power. Like that would be really great to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny little side note. I grew up born in Carolina, raised in Virginia. And for some odd reason, this came back to me when I was reading this book. This is hilarious. We had wallpaper in our dining room that was scenes of a Japanese garden. To this day, the first time I saw that, I must have been, 6 years old. I can still see that wallpaper. And as a child, I used to sit at the dining room table and stare at the paper and go, one day I want to go to Japan so I can see where all those places are. So when I'm reading this book, I was whisked back to 6 years old, which was more than just 10 years ago, in case you're wondering, or 20. And I was like, wow, it fed that thing. So when you said cherry blossoms, I'm like, I have to make this a mission of mine to go to Japan. So you ignited that in me. So thank you, Danielle.
I'm so glad to hear that because I love that country and I think that you would really enjoy it.
Thank you. There is one question that I hope it's not silly. How does one manage? Now you speak Japanese, right?
Well, no, I did when I lived there. I could get by. But now is the question, how do you navigate?
Exactly. How do you navigate
So when I lived there 20 years ago, it was very hard. I would do things like get on a bus and just sort of hope that it would take me back into the direction that I needed to go to get home. And there one time when I got on the wrong bus and ended up back in the warehouse in the bus garage, and the driver's looking at me like, aren't you going to get off somewhere? So yeah, that was very interesting and a learning experience. But now what I found when I went back last year is that there is English almost everywhere under the Japanese. And also I was using an app, like a translation app,
Mhm.
when you can like I think it's called I think it is Google Translate that does this, where you can put a menu or a piece of Japanese on your phone. You can just like take a picture of it or move your
Uh-huh.
phone over it, and it instantly translates it for you. And I used that a lot, and I was able to navigate in a way that I had never been able to do 20 years ago. Also, in Tokyo and Kyoto, a lot of people speak English.
Okay.
Out in Hakone and other places where I went, no, but it's very tourist friendly, I guess,
Yeah.
and there are ways that you can get around. Also, you have to go on the bullet train. You have to go on the fast train. It's amazing, and it's one of those lifetime experiences that you have to have.
100% the bullet train. Matter of fact, and I've got to do that. I love trains, and I wonder, how can we not have that technology? How can we not have bullet trains in America, for crying out loud? We got plenty of ground to put tracks on, and I know, well, David, it costs a lot of money, but how nice would that be?
Has a lot of money. We could do, we have just as much money as Japan over here. And, the really cool thing is that they're developing magnetic
Yes.
trains, right? Where it hovers.
Yeah.
And those trains are insane. They go so fast. They're so safe. And we could have that, we could have trains traversing the country. It would be a wonderful travel experience. I agree. I wish we had those here.
I flash back to my mom my mom came to visit me in one year, and we took the train all the way across the country, stopping all along the way. And there is nothing quite like that mode of transportation.
No, it's so romantic. I've done that too. Eating in the dining car.
Yes.
Having your berth to sort of sleep in at night. And
sure.
Yeah, I really love it too. I'm a big fan.
So as we begin to wrap, there's a little thing I do at the end of every show, Danielle, that I'd love to share. You have sharing with our family. I say family, it's fans. Okay. It's best writing advice. And all the authors who get on the show share that with my audience. And I'd love to hear yours. If you have one great little morsel of wisdom, maybe it's hidden in a puzzle box somewhere.
Yeah, I know. Maybe it's hidden in here.
Maybe that's what the clink is.
Maybe that's what that clink is. So I don't know if this is the most original piece of advice, but it's the thing that's kept me writing for 20 years. And that is, I write every day, even if it's even if it's 100 words, even if it's just taking out a notebook and doing a little bit of a plot point. That is for the first thing I do every morning. I have some coffee and then I do that. And having, being the turtle rather than the hare, has allowed me to withstand a lot of the bumps that happen creatively. I have friends who, will go away for 2 months and like write 12 hours a day and come out with a manuscript. Fine, that might work for them and it may work for a little while. But I think if you want to have a sustainable and long creative career that's enjoyable, that you feel excited to go to your desk every day, so do it every day.
That's great advice. And yeah, the 12-hour days, however many that takes, that is, it's a challenge to your physique, for sure. Yeah. Well, folks, the book, again, is, of course, The Puzzle Box. The cover, as you have now heard us talk religiously about, it's so gorgeous. The story is intriguing. It feels a little... It's so funny. If someone were to... And Tammy will probably ask me later, she'll go, what is it like? I'm like, well... If you took a little Agatha Christie and a little Yakuza mafia, although there is no mafia in it per se, and you take all the things that we love about puzzles and thrillers and you shake it up, that's the puzzle box.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Thank you.
And by the way, just for the record, and thanks to big old love to Megan again, once again, you are a delightful interview.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Big kudos.
And I have to just say, I mean, we're recording, right? That
Yeah.
these are the best questions. These questions are so perceptive. I think you get a good interview if you have great questions. So thank you for that.
Thank you. That's a very nice compliment. And folks, once again, the website, if you want to learn more about my new friend, Danielle, go to DanielleTrussoni.com and buy the book, for crying out loud. You're going to, like she said at the beginning, Danielle said, put it on your mantelpiece and just look at it. Make a little light shine on it and think, maybe if I could just open this thing, I'll learn something. Right?
Totally.
Anyway. I loved your closing advice because so many times what's that old saying about how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? It's the same thing with writing. If you just nibble off a little bit every single day, and it's also muscle memory, isn't it, Danielle?
Completely. So I have a friend who is an athlete, and, an athlete would never dream of running a marathon without training every day, right?
Right.
So I don't know why we would think that we could just, not write for 9 months out of the year and then, do this mad sprint for a couple of months and get a book. It just doesn't work that way. It really is about being there at your desk, concentrating, creating focus. I have an app on my desktop that blocks out the internet for the hours that I write. And that practice of doing that is really liberating and creates a space where I can be creative.
What's the app called? I love that.
It's called Freedom. It's called Freedom.
Freedom. I can all of a sudden hear Wham in the background.
Freedom. Yeah. Me too. But sometimes one time I had an interview like this and I had Freedom on and I couldn't get on because it really it locks you out. And so I had to do this sort of MacGyver stuff with my phone and download a bunch of stuff. And finally I got on and did it, but it's serious. It's it is not going to let you get on, and on Amazon start shopping or anything like that.
I like that because you know what? We as writers, we think, I'm going to be very, very litigious about, very structured, very disciplined. I'm keeping the browser window open, David, just in case I need to do some research. Right. And all of a sudden, Ding! Oh, Tammy wants to go running. Ding! Oh, my buddy wants to say hi. So.
Totally. I find myself, I'm just going to research this little thing. And the next thing I'm on Instagram and arguing with someone in a chat. And, so it's been very, very helpful.
Good. Well, folks, once again, the website, DanielleTrussoni.com, the book, the puzzle box. Danielle, thank you so much for the gift of your time. This has been great.
Thanks, David. This is one of my favorite interviews. Thank you.
Join us next week when the Thriller Zone presents David McCloskey in conversation about the seventh floor. That's next week. Join us. Welcome to the Thriller Zone.
To the show.
Welcome to the Thriller Zone, Don Winslow. If you're a fan of thriller fiction, you'll love the Thriller Zone podcast. As radio personality and TV and film actor David Temple hosts a weekly podcast that gives you a front row seat to the best thriller fiction writers in the world.
This particular book is the final one.
The end of my career.
This did not come super easy out of the gate.
No. The first 15 publishers turned it down. Some people look at where my career is at now, the movie deals and the New York Times bestsellers, and they think it was always that way.
You're kind of a big deal.
I've had my successes, and the most important part is I love what I do.
As you'll see, I've done my homework. It starts out of the gate at 65 miles an hour. And it has everything I want. It's got all the spycraft, a compelling story, satisfying read, and a love story. Hello. A debut right here with Hollywood Hustle. I could not believe this was your first book.
But being in Hollywood and being an actor, everybody and their dog has a screenplay. Well, it taught me structure. It taught me character development. It taught me how to keep a story moving.
As I'm reading Hollywood Hustle with you, I'm like, well, John's nailing it here because he's writing what he knows and he's in Hollywood.
Yeah,
it works so well. Welcome to the show. Dude, I just want to do something different. This is your best work yet.
I just wanted to write a straight-up thriller.
The extreme violence. It's breathtaking. I mean, it's disturbing. And it's worth the price of admission.
Then if you hit them with, you think that's bad?
And that's what you did, yeah. If you enjoy thriller books, TV, and movies, you'll love The Thriller Zone, available anywhere you get your podcast.
Can we just call it I mean, that's it.
Folks, thanks for coming. Take care.
Your front row seat to the best